Morning, everybody. I'm super excited to welcome Alex Richards from Quantum Metric. Alex, welcome.
Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
I know we've been chatting online, and I'm so glad that Peter was able to get you on the show. We have much to talk about, but before we get going, it would be great if you'd please take a minute or two to introduce yourself as well as your company.
Yeah, sure. So, I'm Alex Richards. I'm VP of Partnerships over at Quantum Metric. We're a behavioral analytics and customer journey orchestration platform. So, essentially, if you're on any digital property and you have friction points, we can highlight those and drive actionable outcomes and drive workflows from them to sort of better every aspect of a company.
That's pretty cool. So we'll spend some time on that. But before we do that, maybe you can also talk a little bit about yourself. You have had an incredible journey, worked for some major companies. So why don't you kind of go through a little bit?
The last 15 years been in the partnership space. I think it was around 2017, I had this really great role in New York City, this little startup called Stellar Connect, where we essentially used a very good partner strategy there to essentially drive all of our sales through sort of a partner channel or network, which allowed us to get acquired by Medallia for, I think we spent 100 million in 2020 or 2021. And then from that point, basically was working predominantly on the tech side of partnerships over there, where we then got acquired for, I think it was around 6 or 6.4 billion by Thoma Bravo. And then I was, after a little bit of a change and wanted to try something a little different, let's just say, a different environment, ended up over at SurveyMonkey and headed up their global partnership program, which was really, really interesting. I really enjoyed that world. And from there have, always been across GSIs and channel partners through to ISVs and really sort of from a global scale. So there's a lot of intricacies to that we'll probably get into. And FinTech span, along with that, now where I'm at on sort of like the behavior analytics at the moment. So it's really good. And the whole consulting world, I also find very interesting as well.
That's fascinating. What's the reason? I mean, direct marketing and sales, they're tough, but ecosystem based go to market is much harder, right? Why did you choose the harder path?
I think ecosystems as a whole is very relationship driven. It's very, how do I put it? There's a lot of different overlaps there. And I think from a data standpoint, if people are using adjacent technologies and you can have relationships there to essentially drive different outcomes and improve users or drive sales and things like that, and marketing and audiences, it's a very strategy go to market led world. And that's always been very exciting for me, both working in partnerships and also, helping companies with their sort of go to market strategies as a whole. So I think it's sort of hacking the path to success in certain regards, rather than having to be that lone wolf saying, we're the best, we do this, when you can actually work very well with other people. So that for me has been very, very interesting, and why it kind of led me to this world.
I know you write and talk a lot about looking at an ecosystem above and beyond just pipeline. So can you kind of share a little bit what do you mean by that?
Yeah, definitely. So I think looking at an ecosystem, there's a lot of different things that you can essentially drive through there, both your marketing activities, the audiences that you appeal to, through to integrations and things like that as well. So I think if people are purely looking at, I would say, companies just to drive pipeline efforts, then that's good, but there's sort of other things that you can be doing as well to have way more impact, I would say, on that front. And it gets a lot more interesting, especially when you're in different sort of geos as well, and different ecosystems as well. So I think on that front, if you're thinking from a wider perspective of, well, yes, we want to drive like pipeline efforts, but if we can tell this better together story, we can talk to other technologies, we can talk to how this is going to benefit and impact to drive KPIs, then it tells a better story than just sell our product, which can be a good thing, but also can be very heavily transactional.
So at Quantum, like, what's the structure of your ecosystem? What do you have in your partner base?
Yeah, so basically our ecosystems and our programs predominantly based on technology partners and then also solutions partners. So our technology base isn't purely from your kind of historical ISV world of we just have integrations. It is more how we drive co-sell and also account mapping and referral programs off that. So we have Google. We've been a Google shop since day one. We've got a really strong relationship with Adobe. A lot of people like Optimizely, Dynamic Yield, AB Tasty, Cooltricks, people like that. There's a ton more as well. But our view of the world is more how can we sort of divide and conquer together. And then on our solution side of the fence, it's predominantly SIs, GSIs, and agencies as well. So we work with Accenture, we work with Globant. We also work with a number of other ones as well. I've kind of lost my trail of thought on that front. And a lot of agencies as well, so like Publicis Sapient and IBM as well. So there's and the view of the world on that front is, well, rather than just your historical sort of resale model, how can we solution better so we can deliver a better consulting experience on the sales side, how we can make sure that we're solutioning and integrating correctly, but then also from a services perspective, in the markets that we can't reach well because of where our offices are and our staff, how do we operate better in those regions? But also in verticals as well, we might not have like I don't want to say the best domain experience, but the ultimate domain experience. And that's where partners can really help complement and excel in those regions. So that's our program today. There's nuances in there with, tiering and things like that as well. But realistically, we want to work with partners that want to work with us and provide the best customer experience, because that's what we preach at the end of the day.
So that's great. So Alex, talk to us a little bit about your ideal customer profile, whether by vertical, whether by sizes of employees like mid-market, enterprise. And then maybe we can get into a deep dive of how the partners help you to get to them and differentiate against these major competitors you have, Salesforce, Adobe, etc. So let's start with the end customer.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. So ideal customer, I mean, typically is enterprise. We work across all verticals. We are typically looking for kind of persona wise people that span, I would say, digital products, marketing, analytics, CX, and contact center. They typically seem to be our kind of forte. And I would say people that have challenges across digital journey, orchestration, customer journeys, and also I would say fragmented systems as well. I think we enable through our platform the ability to sort of join up the overall customer journey and even internal journeys to then make sure that they're running really, really well. So that's typically kind of where we fit.
And can you describe a solution in a little more detail, like exactly what it does?
Yeah, of course. Yeah. So our platform basically is a JavaScript tag, and also we have SDK for native apps and also things like kiosks. We essentially sit on that and we track the overall journey of a user. And basically what we do is we recreate that journey. It's typically known as like a session replay. And then from that, we can build out digital journeys. So mapping the digital journeys, trigger workflows off the things that happen in different systems, allow individuals and teams to essentially see where people are having friction points or how funnels aren't working, and then how they can essentially fix that so they're not losing people because a button on a website hasn't worked for 6 months and they're losing revenue and users and loyalty and things like that. So there's a number of different things that we can do on that standpoint, but it's predominantly around analytics and being a sort of a workflow engine for a number of other things on there as well.
So on our site, we're a HubSpot house on the CRM as a backend, but we use Clarity for sort of session replay. Is it similar to that, but it goes deeper?
I would say it's that on steroids. We way more secure. We're basically not, our AI and our platform doesn't train other AIs. We kind of black box everything. And we, unlike where you essentially are just viewing heat maps and where people got stuck, we can actually in real time drive workflows off of that and present information to people rather than them having to essentially look for it. So it's it's used by some of the biggest companies in the world and predominantly every airline that's out there as well. So yeah.
And is it pre-login or is it post-login, or it doesn't matter? Does it go beyond the website, other applications? How far does it cover?
So we're pre and post. We typically find post is quite interesting because there's a lot that customers want to do and they have a lot of frustrations also when they're an existing customer. But yeah, we have other applications as well. We've actually just released for Salesforce, we can actually sit on Salesforce, so you can monitor lightning apps. So you could be QAing a customer service agent, because there's this term where you have to select a certain amount of tickets, and you see where they were getting stuck. And so in the world of AI, it's actually quite interesting on that front. And also, qualifying that if you've got brokers going into your Salesforce, that they're accessing what they should be and not what they should be doing on other stuff. And then also we can sit on kiosks as well. So like in Latin America, for instance, there's a lot of like equivalent to ATMs where you can apply for an account, submit stuff, or like, even those McDonald's type boards. We can sit across those self-service kiosks to essentially make sure we're helping deliver good customer experiences. So a number of different platforms, number of different tools as well.
Got it. So from a competitive perspective, how do you play with the partners to kind of compete with these other major brands?
We have a handful of major competitors out there that do pretty much like for like to a certain degree of what we do. We partner really well with ISVs, like Salesforce and Adobe, and also hyperscalers like Google really, really well, to essentially make sure that we are not positioning product over sort of the impact and the benefit we can drive. And I think when you have a story with an ISV either being presented between you both or through a GSI who's presenting a suite of tools to fit a solution, that's where we kind of win. So we're basically looking for where customers of ours live, how we can essentially join up those fragmented dots to essentially highlight where they need to improve. And then also as well, how we can get data into platforms where, typical users are living. So that like in the contact center to say, hey, Ryan, I've noticed that you've called in about that experience that you had on this mobile app. Was it about, you trying to, open a new credit card, or was it about, you trying to transfer a balance or something like that, versus, hi, sir, can you tell us your account number and what you were doing today and everything? We're trying to speed that gap down to make sure that we are helping our customers be more effective in, a lot of different kind of verticals and also use cases as well.
So when you go back to simplify from a partner engagement wise, like for example, let's say the partners that you have co-marketing, co-selling, and kind of co-keeping. Can you walk us through some of the activities you do with the partner?
Yeah, so I think one of the biggest thing with any partner is making sure that you're qualifying them right. So typically, what we'll be doing is making sure that I would say their approach is similar to ours, and we can service customers properly, and we have the same mentality. It's make sure that account mapping is down, so that your ICP falls in their remit, and then also as well that you can essentially create sort of different buckets. So from a marketing component, with platforms like Crossbeam, for instance, how do you make sure that you can validate that the time that you're going to invest in this relationship is going to generate an output? So the prospects or the customers buckets that overlap with yours or vice versa, how can we hold events or do marketing activities that are going to reach those people? Additionally as well, making sure that you activate your partner correctly. So my biggest thing is, and I think in the industry as a whole that not a lot of people typically talk enough about, is how do you activate and enable like constantly and make it engaging versus I've done this certification and you're one and done. I want to make sure that from an ISV standpoint, you're doing enough activities to engage them and make them realize the value of you trying to help them close a deal or vice versa, and you co-sell together with the right story and message. And also sort of like the GSIs as well. So how do you enable them so when they're in a situation and they hear the trigger points of I have this concern or there's this signal, how you kind of fit in there. So I think understanding where you fit from messaging, personas, competitive analysis, that sort of stuff, that they're armed correctly and you can kind of work from a co-sell or even like a resell or consultative basis properly. So I would say that they're typically the things that we are focusing a lot of time on. And then also just making sure from a services perspective with agencies and consultancies that they can help us fill the gaps on services that we, I don't want to say we don't have the expertise in, but we need more help sometimes on as well.
Got it. So I want to go back to sort of, especially solutions like yours. It's not just a one-time sale. Partners also have to provide services because I'm sure their applications and websites and everything are constantly evolving. So on the co-keep side, on the customer success side, how do you play or enable partners from consult, and roughly what is the dollar opportunity for them if they sell $1 of subscription? How much services revenue can they generate?
That's a complicated question. So I would say if we go back to sort of the success or the client services side, I would say that we do a really good job with our customers. I would say probably better than a lot of our competition. We really strongly believe on making sure that we onboard correctly. Probably not to our detriment, but to the point where maybe we step a little too much in doing that. And we want to make sure that when we're onboarding partners that do sort of more of the services or project based things for us, that they have sort of the same mentality and they can feel they have that same sort of I would say culture. From a dollar value, I mean, typically on the services side, we will typically give the services business directly to the customer. So if we've got, I don't know, a $1 million contract or something like that, we're only essentially sucking up the SaaS contract on there. The services that might be, I don't know, it could be that or it could be more, typically would be on that services provider to essentially deliver. So it's hard for me to quantify just because it's a complicated space. I would say probably there's a 40%, maybe a 45% on any deal where services is the equivalent that an SI or an agency could be sucking up. But it very much depends on the need of a customer and also the different tools they're doing. If it's a full blown digital transformation that might span 50 digital properties, that's obviously going to be a lot more than, I don't know, a retailer that's just basically doing one website and two apps. So it really depends on the scale and the initiatives that a company has at the end of the day.
That's pretty substantial, though. So I want to go back a little bit, through your own journey when you worked at like SurveyMonkey or Medallia or Glassbox or any of these companies versus here. Are there major differences between the ecosystem you had worked in and where you are now, or what are the similarities also?
So I think from a differences perspective, the company is very, very customer centric and people focused. I think a number of the companies that I've been at before have had really good brand presence and respected in the market. But the one thing that I think is, especially in today's age with, AI is taking everybody's jobs and, there's layoffs next, right and center. It's really how do you value both your employees, but how does that also at the same sense when you're onboarding partners transfer to them, which I think is really important because it's typically a relationships game. So I would say really that the company as a whole is very culture centric, which is really nice. And also as well from a technological standpoint as well, like one of our CEO, for instance, is still doing coding from time to time. You can speak technical and non-technical and is very relationships driven. And I think the fact that we listen to our customers and partners is what really translates well in our ecosystem, but also with our customers as well. So I would say from a technology standpoint, the company I'm at right now is really, really good and also very relationships driven. I think places like Medallia and SurveyMonkey, overall good culture, good technology, but like any kind of like larger, not so founder led company, when you have acquisitions, you still have fragmented M&A components of a business where stuff might not fully be integrated. And also it's a bigger ship to steer. And I think that's where, Glassbox, for instance, and even this company Quantum it's a nice refreshing change to sort of back to 2017 when I was at Stellar Connect, and you're like this little teeny tiny startup in like the financial district in New York City, and you're like, how can we change the world with our technology? And it's kind of almost kind of feels a little bit like that, which is quite nice at times.
So I want to go back to one word you just said, acquisition, because when it comes to ecosystem play, it's one thing to acquire a company for direct sales and marketing wise and integrate them technology wise, but it's another thing when you're bringing in different ecosystem partners. You have different playbooks, so can you talk a little bit about your own experiences as you have gone through that journey?
At times it can be a little scary. I think the world of M&A where everyone thinks they're just going to get a big payout and the world's great, there's more to it than that. And I think to your point about maybe partners you've already been working with, and then now because they've been absorbed into a company that might even have a similar product to some of the things that they have, now that relationship's dead to a certain degree. There's a lot of things that you have to think about in that process, not just from a high level company strategy of we've just acquired a bunch of customers and that means we can sell more to them. There's, from an ecosystem standpoint, you then have to really think about the guardrails that you have, kind of like when you're qualifying partners initially. So that, I think, and a lot of people that I've sort of coached around this as well have found that quite an interesting concept that you have to think about. So I would say in that regard, when it comes to M&A, you can lose some of the partners that you had really, really strong relationships with because there might be an aspect of your product that competes with them. But also, as well, there could be really big benefits where if you do now have more offerings within there, you also have the ability to fill a gap that maybe that partner didn't have before from maybe a GSI solutioning offering, but also from an ISV standpoint, you might now have a new capability that you can integrate with and then essentially drive more, revenue dollars or more user adoption through that as well.
Okay, that's great. So because you are a data and insight driven company, how much of your own tools do you use to sort of figure out whether existing partner or acquired partner or new partner, how they're engaging with your infrastructure, what they're learning? What do you do there?
Quantum as a whole tries to practice what we preach. So we do use our own new systems and tools to sort of, our own platform to essentially monitor our customers' experience. And also we're, we're kind of going through a replatforming at the moment when it comes to how our partners work with us, more so because I just want to make sure that we have better process and also that we're doing the best for our customers. So, our partners. So that will now be overlaid with our partner journey as well. But I think overall, when we're listening to customers' experiences and things like that, we're very big on feedback and then also monitoring those journeys as well to make sure that we can have an effective, journey for everyone in there, and even internally as well. We're very big on that as well.
That's pretty cool. I mean, I know your company has been recognized in the AI, in the CX space, and especially the innovation that you're driving on AI. So speaking of data and figuring out insights, what sort of solutions you have for partners? Where are you seeing engagement at the end user level that the partners are excited about and kind of driving this whole new wave?
So I think it kind of comes back to some of the stuff that I said originally. It's about sort of how do you fill gaps that are sort of missing. I mean, yes, our bread and butter is journey orchestration and data analytics and user, analytics and things like that as well. But it's sort of how do we kind of fill those gaps? So, for instance, like with Adobe, they have this product journey, customer journey analytics. One of our big initiatives right now is how do we get data into that somewhat complementary and also a little bit more effectively than Adobe. How do we help drive workflows off some of their data they've got and get it back into our system? How do we use our new agentic capabilities to drive agents and things like that? So we've been doing some stuff with Google. We've got some really good stuff going with Adobe and Salesforce and things like that. So I think our main thing is thinking about how do we eliminate some of the dull, meaningful tasks, sorry, not meaningful, but dull manual tasks that people have, and essentially present data in a way that allows people to take action immediately. So rather than essentially having to go into a tool and be like, how do I find this? You being told so you can action there and then, integrating that in a way where it can drive, an agent to do something. And also, how can we do more interesting things where it might be multi-agent approach and cross ecosystems? So I think that's where we're excited.
So when you kind of go back and look at your kind of sweet spot on the customer side, the customers who buy your product to deploy, what's an average number of users do you have? And then when they deploy it to the end customer, I'm assuming it's both B2B and B2C and B2G, or
So
like what are the scope?
it's typical companies usually that they usually have a customer on there. So typically we like a customer that has like a B2C approach, but we are from a B2B with that customer of ours. So when they're deploying on a website or digital properties, we care really sort of about the amount of people that are hitting per month a digital property, and that traffic is important to make sure that you're building enough data to essentially quantify stuff. But we really sort of, I mean, from a user point of view, it can really vary depending on how many teams that you've got on there. But generally, we're looking at more sort of like analytics, marketing, product teams that will be in our platform. From a contact center standpoint, when we're integrating in with tools that they're using, they might not be living in our platform, but they're consuming a view of our session replay in Salesforce or getting session summaries of that view, sort of like you would with the Google page, where when you can sort of like summarize and get bullet points, we can sort of do that automatically with things like Salesforce. So you could have thousands of people in a contact center that are accessing that information to be more effective. So it really varies, but yeah, we're enterprise, and we want to make sure that we have millions of views on a web page per month to be really effective.
And the reason I brought that up is to kind of create a context. So let's say if you have 10 customer users, I'm not talking about the end user, that the journey that you're mapping, but the 10 customer user, and let's say on an average they do 100 tasks using your product, right? So there's about 1,000 task bundle. So when you kind of look at today where the AI applications are, do you see AI automating 10% of those 1,000, or AI is doing something new that they don't do today? Where is sort of the data driven, or the agents or agentic is having an impact?
So I think on our end, I mean, if you translate website traffic, let's say somebody had, I don't know, 6 million pieces of traffic a month, and let's say, I don't know, 4 million of that is unique people. Let's say that's end customers going on a website. I would say what we are trying to do, and I think what a lot of people want to be seeing, especially from a customer standpoint, is how do we make sure that we can keep those people on a digital property? They have that best experience possible. So how do we make sure that when those friction points come up where your cart button or your customer login on a banking page isn't functioning, and making sure that that is not affecting revenue and things like that? So how can we drive a workflow off that? So I think when you have those examples, well, how do we do in real time where an agent could essentially, we notify another platform, for instance, how do we make sure that that is going to be addressed? Could be fixed. It could be that you're notifying multiple teams, you're logging in Jira, it's going in Slack, it's going on that. Like, how can you sort of orchestrate that as more of an agent? And then also maybe on the customer success side as well, or the contact center side, if somebody is having this issue on a website, why does like 85% of that have to go to a individual when we could essentially be answering through the contact center, um, I don't know, 40% of that? So it's more of I think there's low hanging fruit there, not to quote a well used term, to essentially drive impact immediately. I think the ability to collaborate cross the ecosystem is where agentic is going to be most powerful, and I think we're going to see more insights there. But again, it really depends on a company's tech stack, and I think one of the things that is missing in a lot of these AI and agentic conversations is everyone's tech stack is fragmented, and that needs to be fixed before you can just say AI is going to fix everything. So we need things to talk to one another and capture the right things to be effective.
Yeah, I completely agree with the data fragmentation side, but I want to bring in another dimension called the geo side, and your own personal experience and working with partners. The AI laws are going completely two different directions when it comes to Europe versus US. Data privacy wise, Europe has a much stronger protection from a privacy perspective. So how do you see this kind of shaping out over the next 12 to 24 months? Because there'll be a propensity to crunch everything, learn everything, share everything. Where do you think these two parts of the world are going?
Well, I think from a data privacy standpoint, handling people's data is, and especially where AI is going, it's really critical that, one of the things that we do very well is when we're capturing an experience, we're automatically on a device filtering out the PII so it doesn't get transferred over. So I think making sure that good practices as a whole are down, but also any technology that's talking to other technology to drive artificial intelligence, there needs to be a little bit more focus on, well, what are we trying to achieve out of this? Because you can end up transmitting too much or sometimes too little. I think like you said, places like EMEA, just through the regulations with GDPR, is probably going to be, I would say, one of the leaders. I mean, I know there's this new stuff that's come out of California as well when it comes to AI, which I think is a really good step in making sure that as a whole we have more restrictions about what we can and can't do with data. But also, as well, there's emerging markets like LATAM, for instance, where there's a lot less legacy technology there. And I think what we're going to be seeing from places like LATAM, probably in APAC as well, is innovations where they're going to be taking into consideration these concerns immediately because they're so, tech driven. So I think they're probably going to be the areas that we're going to learn a lot from. I think historically, the US and some of EMEA might be we learn from mistakes, but it's just I think it's one of those passes with technology as a whole. So yeah, that's kind of my view right now of it. That might change next week. It tends to shift quite quickly.
That's quite amazing. Well, Alex, I wanted to thank you for your time. I have to have you back because I had so many other questions that I wanted to ask you, but it's been an amazing conversation. It's great to meet you. Again, thanks for being here.
No, thanks for having me. I really appreciate it.